All right, let's dive into the massive multi-trillion-dollar world of green bonds. You hear about them all the time, companies betting big on them. But is it all just good PR, or is there something real there? We're going to find out if it actually pays to go green. And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, this is not some tiny niche corner of finance. We are talking about a market worth over $3.5 trillion. I mean, that is a huge wave of cash pouring into projects with that green label. Okay, but here's the real question, right? Does just slapping that green label on a loan actually do anything? Does it really move the needle for a company's bottom line or, for the planet? So yeah, that's the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? It's time to cut through the hype and get to what the data actually says. And to do that, we're not just going to look at corporate press releases or some opinion piece. Nope. We're digging into a major academic study that did the hard work of sifting through global data to find out what's really going on. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. What is a green bond exactly? In simple terms, a green bond is a loan, but it comes with one very important string attached. The money you raise can only be used for projects that have clear environmental benefits. It's kind of like a loan that comes with a very specific, very green to-do list. And this is where you really see the key difference. With a regular bond, a company gets the cash and can use it for, well, pretty much anything. But with a green bond, that money is ring-fenced, and the company has to report back on what it was spent on and what impact it had. That whole accountability piece, that's the game changer. Or at least it's supposed to be. Which, you guessed it, brings us right back to that big question. Is all this extra reporting a real catalyst for change? Or is it just a fancy way to look good? Greenwashing. So to figure this out, researchers got really clever. They basically set up a massive global experiment to see what happens in the real world. And when I say they went big, I mean it. They looked at over 1,000 different green bonds for more than 500 companies. And this wasn't just in one or two places. The data covered 77 different countries over more than a decade. So yeah, this isn't some small sample size. We're talking a massive global data set. The way they did it was actually pretty smart. They took the companies that issued green bonds and then compared them to a carefully chosen control group of similar companies that didn't. That way you get a really clean apples-to-apples comparison of what happened after the green bond was issued. Okay, so the moment of truth. What did all this data actually show? Let's get into the results. Money, value, and, well, a bit of a twist. So after crunching all those numbers, the first big finding popped out. And it was a clear win for the company's own finances. So the data showed a really clear connection between issuing these green bonds and having better financial performance. On top of that, it was also linked to a boost in the company's total value. So the first takeaway seems pretty straightforward, right? It looks like doing good is also good for business. So case closed then? It's a simple win-win. Companies make more money, the planet gets healthier, and we can all go home. Simple. Well, not so fast. Because when the researchers looked past the financial numbers at the actual environmental impact, things got, well, a lot more complicated. And this is where it gets really interesting. See, this is where we uncover the secret ingredient, the thing that makes all the difference between a green bond that's just talk and one that actually delivers. And it all comes down to rules. And here's the kicker. The study found that the real measurable environmental improvements only tended to happen when the company was operating in a country that already had strict government environmental policies in place. Think about that. The green bond itself wasn't some magic wand. It was more like a tool that worked best when you already had a strong set of instructions. So why is that? Well, strong policy basically supercharges these green bonds in three key ways. First, it creates real incentives, making green projects more urgent and profitable. Second, it cuts down on greenwashing by holding companies truly accountable. And third, it gives investors confidence that their money is actually making a difference. So let's wrap this up. What's the big takeaway here? Well, for investors, it means you can't just look at the green label. You have to look at the country's policies too. For businesses, it shows a clear path to being both profitable and sustainable, but that path needs to be paved with clear rules. And for all of us, it just underscores how critical it is for private money and public policy to work together. At the end of the day, it all boils down to one thing: context is everything. And it's summed up perfectly by the study's author, Ahsan Umar, who wrote, green bond effects should be assessed together with institutional factors, not in isolation. That one sentence pretty much sums up this whole complex story.
And that leaves us with one last really big question to think about. If green finance needs a strong rule book to actually work, who exactly should be writing those rules? That's the question we're all going to have to grapple with as this market keeps getting bigger. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.